So, from the film we have Ronnie Blevins, Harvey, Jabbar Lewis, Dave Davis. I want you to give them an incredible round of applause. Jeremiah Friedlander, Stacey Rose, Gilbert Owour, Damien Smith, and Cedric Jones. And a treat, with a special treat for you, via Zoom from London, Ben Foster and Charmaine Bingwa. And the Joneses, there they are. Oh my gosh. First of all, congratulations. What an incredible film to all of you. I mean, wow. I'm going to start with Zoom. Charmaine, what was it about the script that resonated with you?
So much. Bill Coolidge just has an amazing way with words. I picked up the script and I couldn't put it down. I read it twice immediately. And for me, I had come across the image of Peter's image, but I never knew his story. And the way the script was constructed, I couldn't stop turning the page. I was so enthralled to find out who this man was. And I've always found the image really intriguing because, you know, on his back is the wounds and the violence and the abhorrence that is slavery. But in his posture and in the way he holds himself is dignity and spirit. And I think that's so at the core of this film.
Ben, what about for you?
I read the script, was profoundly moved, and wanted nothing to do with it. A little bit of backstory is, like many Americans, we come from other countries, and my grandfather, my nana, we come from Romania and the Ukraine, and my grandfather, when he came to this country, they had escaped the pogroms for certain death. My nana hid under the floorboards of a neighbor, and she slept with a radio under her pillow till the day she passed, because she would hear the boots of those who were trying to eliminate Jews. My grandfather, my father, my nana, marked by that past, were inspired by the civil rights movement and marched with Martin Luther King a month after Selma. My grandfather would picket outside Woolworths because they wouldn't allow people of color to eat at the counter. So this is the last role that I want to explore. When I got on the horn with Antoine, who I have immense respect for, I'm a huge fan of Will Smith, says for decades, like, make the movie, it's gonna be wonderful. Antoine, thank you for thinking me wonderful. He said, thank you for your time, and I just wanna lift the veil. I said, okay, well, go do that. And those words stuck in my head, and I couldn't sleep. And I stayed up all night. I was like, lift the veil, white devil. And I couldn't figure it out, but I couldn't stop thinking about what Antoine said, lift the veil. So as written, Bill wrote a wonderful script, but the character as written was placed in the South, and as sometimes, as fellow actors, you get a feeling, and you gotta follow it. And that was, if we're gonna lift the veil, let's take the villain out of the South. Because not all Southerners are racists, and not all Northerners are civil rights activists. But if we can put him in the middle of the country, I have a door. So, and I called up Antoine actually on July 4th, and I sent him Frederick Douglass's, as he has read 1,000 times, What Does 4th of July Mean? And said, let's lift the veil. And he said, let's go.
Ben, I don't know if you can hear that, but you're getting a round of applause for that. Cedric, I'm going to start and work all the way up. What was it about the script that stood out for you?
The script for me, like Charmaine said, I read it as soon as I got it. I read it a few times because the first time it really caught my attention. The second time you learn even more. I'm actually from the South, so it resonated with me totally different. I knew the story of Peter prior to this, and I heard about it from my parents and teaching Black history is taught differently in the South. So for this film to actually come to life, I was like, whoa, somebody's really being bold right now. And to read it, the details of it were kind of close to what my parents had told me about this story. And I was like, wow, this is really amazing. So it touched me in a different way because, like I said, I'm from an era of where we Confederate flags still, hang high for a long time. When we were told we couldn't walk from school by ourselves, we had to walk in a pack of 5 or more just so we can make sure we got home safe. So the script in itself was super powerful, and I think I think even besides the script, being able to I talked to Antoine, and I think his take on it to make this film come to life was just as powerful as the script in itself, because his motivation was, no matter what, I need this to be. Like being said, I think Antoine's motivation making us all want to do it even more, like, all right, well, he's going for it, let's all go for it together. But the script was powerful. I mean, if you can ever just read the script in itself, I mean, the story it's almost like you see the movie and then you read it. It's always different when you read it. So it really resonated with me on a personal level too, and I thought it was more important that the people that are a part of it are all in. And I think everybody, even from, people hate to say the extras, but those people were all in. I mean, all in from bottom to top. And I think what people they can't see and capture on film is how much work was put behind this film to make it happen. So you have the script, you have these great actors who are moved by the script, and then everybody who's casted everybody has moved to the point where it's gotta get done. And give me goosebumps talking about it though.
Wow. Well, Damien, talk a little bit about some of the challenges of filming this film in Louisiana and the swamps, and you obviously shot this during COVID, but there were other factors that came into account.
Yes, it was. It was a lot. We had heat, mosquitoes, war scenes, bombs blowing up. I know you just watched this war scene. You see how intense it was. You see how emotionally draining that can be, and you throw on the heat, you throw on the mud. There's a lot of stunts, there's a lot of bombs, there's a lot of things going off while we're going through this, and we're staying in character. And like we were saying, Antoine makes sure that everyone was on message, and everyone wanted to be on message as much from the top to the bottom. I mean, from the bottom of the call sheet all the way to the top of the call sheet, everyone was on a unified thought of making this the best film we can. So we put up with all those challenges, hurdles, and things like that to make sure that we were able to do justice as much as we can to the script and really the story, because that's what's most important. Because I didn't know Peter's story. I knew the picture, but I didn't know the entire story. So when I read the script and I'm from Missouri, I'm from St. Louis. So when I read that script and I understood the story and the journey, and part of that with Antoine speaking about, hey, we're going to make this the strongest and the best we can, we were all on it. It's an action movie too. You know, he's fighting alligators. Come on now. You know, alligators dodging bullets, people were dropping. So I'm in it for the action as well. So it's not just we're seeing a movie about struggle. We're seeing, you know, a Will Smith action film as well, you know, wrapped up in that. So it was a beautiful experience, even though we went through so much to make it happen.
I mean, wrestling alligators and running away from dogs too. Gilbert, what about for you? Talk about the experience and what it was like working with Antoine and the scripts too. Like, what attracted you to that?
Well, in all honesty, just taking all the way from the leadership down the call sheet, this grouping of artists and filmmakers, honestly, I think it wouldn't matter what the material was, I would want to collaborate with from the get-go. The fact that they came together to tell this story, and I was even in consideration, was almost an alternate universe experience for me. It was like telling stories like this is one of the reasons I wanted to be an actor. And I came here from Kenya, and it's been a long journey for me as far as moving into artistry. I came here as a business major, learning about the story of slavery, living in a place where that story still had a ripple effect in everywhere I went. That was all a huge learning experience, and I'd learned about it, you know, in classrooms and watching films, but something about being on the ground in the years since I arrived here was a really profound experience. So to be able to take literally my experience, seeing this picture, a picture I had known and seen in books or seen online, and to be able to say, this is this guy's name, this was his story. He had this beautiful family. He went through all this, all these experiences that created these markings on his back, and then he trudged through pursuing that love and that hope and that faith. And just the story on the page was kind of unfathomable that someone could endure so much. Once we got on the ground, and I come from my comfortable trailer and sit there in the swamp and look around. I'm like, I had a good breakfast this morning. I slept in a warm bed. But if you left me here, I don't know, 2-3 hours tops. And I have shoes on my feet, you know, I'm clothed, and I was just thinking to go through a life of servitude the way they did and still have that human spirit to trudge through all that. Regardless of the story we're telling, that story of the human spirit overcoming insurmountable odds was just so compelling. But like I said, when my agent first told me about it, they had me at Will Smith, Antoine Direction. So the combination of it all has been a dream come true, and meeting and collaborating with artists like this has been it's indescribable, and the fact that we can bring this story and share this with the planet, it feels like such an honor, and you know, to be even a small part of that. Yeah.
Amazing. Jeremiah, what about for you? Talk about what it was like working with Antoine and Will and Charmaine.
It was overall great. I'm glad that I got to help bring this story to life. When we first got the audition for it, when we first got the audition, we looked over it. We knew it was going to be different. So we practiced it, and I tried to build up the emotion, trying to help, because
You were fantastic.
Amazing.
In this. Yes.
And can I say this kid, listen, when he came to the premiere, I walked past him about 4 or 5 times, And I recognize he has grown so much
Shout out.
since we last saw him. And I think the kids in the movie, they don't get enough credit. The emotional, because this is what I do know. It's hard for them to fathom the reality of what's going on. For them to be able to put like he said, he had to build up this emotion. Not one time, you guys know how acting is. He had to do this take after take after take. So these kids, we definitely
You
did your thing, man. I'm proud of you.
Jeremiah, you were fantastic, and to your point, all the kids were so great in this. Dave, talk about what it was like working with Antoine.
Everybody on the set was amazing. To echo what Damien said, you know, when a project has people that are so dedicated to the story being told, it's very difficult for that project to fail, because from the bottom to the top, everybody is passionate about the story that's being told. And for me, I think for too long, stories like this either haven't been told or have been told from the perspective of the oppressor. And so to have the opportunity to lend my voice to such an incredible, massive project. I mean, this is the largest set I've ever been on. There were 4 base camps at times. Hundreds and hundreds of people. It was really incredible. So just to be a part of that is a privilege, because I think that this is such an important story. I've said this for the last week since I saw the premiere. I think it should be required viewing for every American. I feel very honored to play this photographer character, because, he's an artist. He's at the forefront of technology, and he's trying to do exactly what this film is doing today, which is tell the story and make sure that it gets out there. And that's as important now as it was then, in a time where misinformation is so rampant and people are denying and fighting, and we have confusion, and that's why it's so important to tell this human story. And I think that Will's character in this film is like one of the most likable characters in film history. I mean, not only is he a warrior, but he's constantly keeping the hope alive and looking out for his fellow humans. And it's just, I couldn't be happier to be a part of it.
Well, thank you. To your point, Dave, Charmaine, the film's actually been taken around colleges in America, being shown, because it's so important. I mean, what has that reception been like for, hearing the importance of this, getting this film out there, and the reaction?
Yeah, I mean, Will has been the chief in terms of taking it to colleges, but even us over here, we've been in America, in London, and I haven't seen a film impact an audience in this way in a long time. A lot of people who've seen it have said it's taken them, stayed with them for a few days, and it's got it's just beautiful I think there's a legacy to this film, and I think that's important because it's Peter's legacy. And I think it's really important as well because this is the legacy that the people that came before us left, the enslaved people, because they literally on the very land that we were filming on, plantation, there was 400 years of pain and toil and destruction that happened on that land. And a lot of people have been saying, why are we having a slavery film right now? And principally, we need to honor these brave warriors who gave in and of themselves so that we can have this life that we have today. And unfortunately, it will really inhibit our future. So, and I think people are feeling that, and as everyone in the cast has echoed, is that everyone went deep for this. They put their heart and soul into this, and I think you can feel that in the fabric of the film.
Can I just leapfrog on that for a second?
Go ahead.
Charmaine, would you share that direction that Antoine shared with us? I mean, as actors, there's a room full of actors. What does a great director do? And it's different for each actor. But what did he say? Because you were talking about the earth.
Yes, yes. Antoine is masterful. He's an auteur. He works from his heart. He works from his spirit. And you can feel it in the film. And he would say, I mean, there's multiple directions that he said that will stay with me for the rest of my days, like the level of depth to his notes. But, you know, he would remind us that where we are standing upon is 400 years of suffering. Like these, and, you know, even from the production design as well, Naomi would remind us that, you know, there are literal hanging trees around us where people were hung, and it gets into the film. And, you know, I remember when we were shooting the scene where I speak to my children, beautiful Jeremiah included down there. And, you know, we had wrapped that scene. He was happy with it. And I yelled out to him, I was like, Antoine, may I please say this in Haitian Creole? Because there's a power to that language. And part of the power in that language is that Haitian people were the only ones who successfully pulled off a slave revolt. So, you know, there's survivors in there, you know? And I think one of the most beautiful things about this film is that we saved ourselves. As was mentioned before, there wasn't a white savior to come and save people. But Antoine gave me this beautiful direction as I was saying that monologue. And number one, this is how beautiful he is. He goes, "Where's your eyeline?" And he runs over and he sits like next to my eyeline as if he's like willing me through this scene. Like he was in it with me, and that's, for me, a mark of a great director. And he said, "I want you to look down the barrel of that camera, and I want you to tell everyone to hold on. I want you to tell Black America to hold on. I want you to tell my kids to hold on." And that helped me tell my kids in the scene to hold on.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Jabbar, what was it like for you working with Antoine and Will?
As like a new actor, as somebody who's been out here in LA since 2014, moved out here when I was 17 years old, chasing a dream. You know, when I get that breakdown, this is like the 1,000th breakdown I ever get in my life, and you see Antoine and Will, you're like, okay, immediately, yes. I don't care what it is, but I remember getting Gordon's breakdown. I'm like playing a 40-year-old. I'm like, all right, I got it, let's do it. Like, I don't care. And I remember they were just like, hold off on this, we have another role for you. I'm like, okay, cool. And I auditioned for it, and I remember Antoine, when we hopped on the Zoom call for the callback, we did the audition, and then he asked me what I liked about the role, and I said, well, script-wise, I love that there wasn't a white savior. Oftentimes we get a lot of people, I feel like I'm a part of Black Twitter. Like, I always hear what people talk about, and they're like, you don't want to watch another slave movie. And I'm like, it's 400 years of slavery, and you think the 10 movies that you've seen about it is enough. It doesn't make sense to me. These stories are important, and I think there's so many stories, just like Peter's, where we can dive more into the psyche of slavery and the family aspect that I think this film was beautifully told. And just Will, I think on set, he just taught me how to be a superstar. Just taught me how, when he walked on set, shaking every extra's hand every single day and giving them advice in between takes, and they asking questions, and it just was a collaboration between all of us, and we made a movie.
Yeah. And fantastic, powerful, and important thing that to do. Ron, what was your process for getting into character? Talk about that in the comments.
Yeah, going off of what he said, first of all, Will, he treated every single person on that set the same as he treated Antoine, the same as he treated, everyone was equally treated by him. And I think that's the mark of
of a good person. And I noticed that right away. And he lived up to all the expectations that I had as someone who has no memory of him not being in it on screens, and my brother and I watching Fresh Prince, listening to his music, and then Independence Day, and then him maturing with us, because we were right in that time frame. And they say you don't want to meet your heroes, but he lived up to it as a person, and I can't say enough good things about him. And the way he treats people is the best. And hi, Ben and Charmaine. Thanks for joining us. You guys must be tired.
Hi, guys.
I was also, I had trepidation about playing this part when I met with Antoine, for obvious reasons. But when I met with Antoine, he gave me basically one sentence that made it all work for me, and he basically put it like, the more you commit to the evil of this guy, the more you're honoring the people that were wronged by it. And shit, as soon as he said that, I was like, all of a sudden, I didn't feel bad about kicking Gilbert. But that was talking about good direction, and Charmaine, hearing what he said to you, because that was the first time me seeing the movie at the premiere, and you and Ben were wonderful, and you ripped our hearts out, and to know what the direction was to get you to do that or help you do that, it makes sense, because all the directing Antoine did with me was in that very first meeting when he said, the more you commit to that evil, the more you're honoring the people that it wronged, and it stuck with me, and I thought about it every morning, every night, every time. You know, you would see, it gets me emotional to this day when I talk about it. There were often times, because you guys just saw the movie, so there's a lot of big, wide, sweeping shots, and close-up is used very strategically, but there's a lot of wide ones. And at the camp, oftentimes you'd be looking at the set, and there would be no production in front of you. All the production will be behind you. And this set was as good as sets could ever get. You know, I don't care how good your career is, there's a good chance you'll never see a set so elaborate in your life or career. And there were times when one in particular, when Ben rides in with dragging a slave behind his horse, we were all in that scene, and my character was watching that scene, so I was also watching that scene, and there was zero production. And in the first wide, Ben comes in, Ronnie and Aaron untie John and drag him to the fire, and I'm watching all this, and then Ben just, without hesitation, took that iron and stuck it to John's face, and he has the most amazing voice, and the guttural scream that he let out, you know, it was the closest I think you could come to getting in a time machine and seeing what it really was. And because I didn't have any real interaction, but I was in the scene, you know, I was witnessing it more than playing in it. I don't care how dove into a character you are, you see that, and then you think to yourself, shit, that was 170 years ago that shit was happening. That's not a long time. It is not a long time. That's 1.5 lifetimes, you know, if you have a long life. But and so I had to walk, and that was like day 2. And I was terrified of Ben after that. And I had to, after we cut, I had to walk away and regain my composure and get back into the character, because even Antoine's direction of the more you commit to the evil, the more you're honoring the situation, it didn't apply anymore, and it actually comforted me to look back at the production, to see all the cameras and crew, and because like what you were going off of with the background performers, is the first time I've been a part of something where they truly earned the title background performer. I mean, there's a bunch of drama school guys that drove in from Houston, wherever it was, all these regional areas, and they were giving it as much heart and committing to their characters as all of us were. And so it made for a very realistic set experience. And so it was the healthiest working experience of my life because of that, the time machine aspect, and yeah.
Let's give it up for background actors too.
Just to jump in really quick on to Grant's credit. He, as he said, fully committed as we were doing those takes. But to his credit as an actor, after every take, he would completely snap out of it and come and be like, are you okay? Are you all right? It was quite incredible to see. And then we would be rolling and he would be back in it. And it was like, is this the same guy? And
Go to therapy.
And it was just fantastic having a collaborator like that, because there was an awareness of what was going on, but then the professionalism as well, to be like, this is working for me, but is it working, are we okay? And at some point I just said, Grant, just do your thing. And
Gilbert did say to me eventually, Grant,
Yeah.
stop asking me if I'm okay.
So anyway, I just wanted to add that.
Let me piggyback off that, because Ronnie, this guy's he's a terrible guy in the movie, but Ronnie and Ben both are two totally different individuals. Ben usually stays in character. He is a guy who is intense with his craft and stays in character. Ben was even between breaks, takes, you could see him sitting down, intense. I was scared to have a regular conversation with him because, boy, get over there. But I remember Ben was at the craft table. And I wanted to go by him so bad to get something. But I was like, I'll just wait till you finish. I was like, that Rice Krispie treat can wait. I was like, I'll wait till Ben come out of character. And so Ronnie, the totally opposite. He does like him. And now, Ronnie, I trained this guy now. So even Ronnie, first they come and train with me, hey, you know I'm really not that guy in the movie. I'm like, man, what are you talking about? This is like months later. Like, no, you're okay. You sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. So my gym has quite a few African Americans in there. And Ronnie's always in there. I'm like, hey, Ronnie was a bad guy in the movie. He's like, hey, could you please not say that here? But these guys are so good at their craft. But what I do like is that they all never, I think what we, as black people, I think the worst thing you could do to us is pretend it didn't happen. Or pretend things aren't as intense or when it's serious. Every one of these individuals, all the white characters in this film, they have all, in some kind of way, said, I'm sorry. I hate that happened to you all. We acknowledge it. And like he said, even seeing the set, for me, was emotional, because at the beginning of the movie, there are like 4 heads. That's crazy to come to set every morning, like these same 4 heads are still here. Like, we can't even take them down for a minute. And then to see people hanging. And I know it was an article about it, but to the credit of Will Smith also, I think one of the most honorable things he did was, if you all remember the pit scene, there was a pit. And the pit had all these devils. Now, it is intensely hot out there. We got people, passing out from heat stroke. And Antoine is so serious about making this thing real. He's like, hey, drive any volunteers who are willing to get into this pit and make this thing happen. And to the respect of background, we have background actors who are saying, I'll do it. I want to make it happen. And they get in this pit, it's a long scene and it's hot. And when it's over, Will is almost in tears and said, that's the craziest thing I've ever seen in acting. Like, that is the most everybody who was in the pit, I'm giving you $1,000.
And he did.
And he did. I was in the pit, Will. He was like, I didn't see you. I was wondering. But no, I just want to tell Ben, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate your craft, Ronnie, you guys. Y'all did y'all thing, and I appreciate at the end of every scene or end of the movie or when it was over that you all took time to acknowledge all of us as Black people who are still trying to fight to be better, that you all didn't suppress how we felt. You didn't suppress the moment. You said, no, I see it for real, and it needs to be shown. So thank you.
I love you, brother.
Ronnie, do you want to add to that and talk about Antoine's direction? Like, what did he tell you?
Well, I think the greatest gift that Antoine gave me was creating the world. And obviously he had a lot of beautiful direction, but this world that Antoine and Bob Richardson create, being in a room full of artists, process, it's a kind of a sacred thing, and I think it's a very, very different thing, whether we work internally, external to internal, but you do all the things, right? You read a script over and over again, the repetition, you dive into history. I had the good fortune of coming out a few weeks ahead of time to do horseback training. But I think any good process, what you want to do is you want to, go through it, exhaust it, and then throw it all away, right? And so the greatest gift Antoine gave to me was that first day, and showing up on set and seeing this world and being transported. I realized that I wasn't prepared at all, and maybe like nothing could prepare me, because I was just like, I already committed to the ideology of the character, and that it had its own reconciling to do. But when I saw that world he created, it washed away all the work in a good way, because that work still exists underneath, right? But I imagine like so many people who came before us who had to fight, in battles, just showing up to that and being like, I don't know what to do. And I think that's sometimes a real good place to be as an artist, right? So.
Amazing. Charmaine, I want to talk to you about the scene with the hand and the cotton gin. It was such a powerful, painful moment to watch, because there's so much. It's, the love for her family, her husband. Talk about that scene and, what Antoine said.
I think, one thing to preface it with is what I love about this story, and I'm so sensitive to how Black women are treated in cinema, is that often, Black women are left out of narratives completely. And I'm so glad that included in this script was the level of sacrifice that she makes to keep her family together. The reality of slavery at the time was that Black women, they had to do the same amount of physical labor as men. They had to care for their children. They had to stitch clothes in their spare time. They had to ensure that everyone was well fed. They faced the sexual predation of slave owners. And I'm so glad we included that scene in this film, because Black women need the credit for what they do, They are loved. She knows that what she's asking her daughter to do is going to give her nightmares for the rest of her life. But it's still better than her family being torn apart. And there was a lot of, we know that Dodian existed from, her name was on a list of property, because that's how they treated us at the time. They like to dehumanize us and take our identities away. But we didn't know that much about the rest of her life. And so I really leaned on narratives from enslaved people, and I read the women's ones in particular with a lot of care. I think, it's one of those processes I was saying to Ben, I listened to like over 100 hours of narratives, and it leaves an imprint on your soul. And, there were ones where people were horribly maimed and the physical violence was awful, but some of the most haunting narratives I read were the ones of the emotional and the spiritual and the psychic destruction that slavery caused. And there was one where, you know, a grandmother was given her freedom at the end of her life because she was too old to perform any physical labor anymore. And so, you know, which the slave owners thought was an act of mercy, but she was left in a little cottage in the woods to fend for herself after a life of labor, raising the slave owners' children. And then her children were split up like cattle and sold. And she was left in the forest to think about the memories of all those who were gone for the rest of her days. And for me, that's almost a worse hell than the physical pain. And so she knows that if she doesn't keep her family together, there was no joy in those times for enslaved people except for within each other. And so I think, you know, it becomes obvious then that, of course, that would be the next thing you'll do, you know? And also, you know, we were discussing, Ben, how there's two elements to slavery, and, you know, she may have been in physical bondage, but she wasn't in mental bondage. So you can take her arm, but you can't take her spirit.
Beautiful, beautiful. On that note, comes to the end of the panel. Thank you, Charmaine. Thank you, Ben, for joining us from the UK. And thank you to this incredible cast for sharing your insight. Thank you.